Welcome back to the noughties! Last time you might recall that I gave this VCR a service. I believe it to be an early 2000 model, one of the last Panasonic VCRs ever made, and it's in pretty universal agreement that Panasonic made the best VCRs ever and indeed pioneered the format of the VCR, introducing things like NICAM, extra heads, very high quality hi-fi stuff that came over from its professional range. So it's a good, machine. Obviously completely obsolete now, but still no doubt a bit of fun to have around. Videotapes in the past, the 240 was a bit of a expensive option. It was a 4-hour version, which would give you 8 hours in long play. Most of them were 3 hours, coming from companies such as Scotch, 3M, Maxell, TDK, Memorex, etc, etc. Again, very hard to get hold of now, but believe it or not, there's a special offer in Poundland that I speak that gives you these for £1 each. So we're just going to do a quick power on here now. This is in amazing condition, not only because I've serviced myself, but structurally it's good, so it's worth holding on to. You can see here, just going to go through it briefly, you can see such functions that are introduced, such as the hi-fi NICAM. By the way, Panasonic, when they left the VHS market, they went on to do something called DVD RAM, which was before the technology enabled DVDs to be recorded to. So DVD RAM was a stopgap thing, and many machines will still play DVD RAM. In fact, Samsung was one of the early adopters of DVD RAM, and a lot of their split machines today with the HD recorders and Freeview will still play back DVD RAM, but DVD RAM was an early and expensive but relatively short-lived dead duck compared to VHS, which lasted nearly 30 years. Oh, the cat has arrived. Say hello, Jimmy. So anyway, yeah, quickly going through. All right, goodbye. PDC is something that I never used. Somebody will no doubt tell me what it means. I don't even know what it means. Video Plus was something that was introduced after Panasonic introduced something called barcode scanning, which Amstrad took up, and also Seisho, a brand made by Orion exclusively for Dixons. Now, Video Plus, I don't know either. I think it's just a code you type in that was in the Radio Times. Again, you're talking history now. Barcode was interesting because previous Panasonics I had in the past, you had this futuristic looking pen that you'd scan over in the Radio Times, a barcode, and it would program your VCR, and you felt exceedingly futuristic. Not only that, but you had these plastic laminated barcode things telling you if the thing wasn't there, you could run over it, like Tuesday, beep, 5 o'clock, beep, repeat every week. It was good, and you really did feel like you were in the future. And now, of course, it's completely in the past. Now, the one thing that this machine doesn't have, again, being the NVHV60. In the past, I've had the 80, and I've had various Super VHS models where the audio was pretty much the same. This doesn't have a gain control. Anybody thinking about buying one of these for audio use, which is what I'm using it for, it doesn't have a gain control on the audio in. But that doesn't really matter, because as long as you've got an output, you can experiment with drive settings on the tape for the saturation and stuff. And again, a very, very highly advanced, well-engineered, well-pioneered VHS audio hi-fi mechanism in there. Of course, the video settings are somewhat lacking compared to today. No HD, in fact, not even a 640 by 480 video quality that you get on YouTube. You're talking here about roughly 240 by 480 lines, and that's interlaced as well, and it's not compatible across different formats such as NTSC and the PAL format, phase alternating line, and even within those there's different ones. There's PAL CCAM, etc, etc. So for video use I wouldn't really recommend it, but for audio these players are indeed really good machines, and compared to, say, plugging a microphone into an iPod or iPad or even a mobile phone, or even a laptop, unless you've got a high resolution mic preamp or some sort of analog compressor or something on the input stage, which could cost in the thousands of pounds. This is a bargain bucket to get the same thing. Now these tapes obviously look completely historic now. They're not as big as the old U-matics, and they're not as sophisticated, believe it or not, as the Sony Betamax. But that's a different story, which if you're interested in, I'll tell you about. Anyway, here you just put in the tape. Off in default mode, you've just got the clock. There's nothing really I need to tell you about. Timer record I'm not going to bother with. There's various things over here which maybe somebody can tell me about. CVC Super I've never even heard about. SQPB. Well, I know that there was HQ, VHS HQ for a while. Oh, you're back. And there was two different things I can remember that are introduced on HQ. But SQPB, which presumably means super quality playback, I have absolutely no idea what sort of what sort of thing they're. Presumably just an extra noise filter, either on an analog board or in some sort of PCB IC. Right, so here we've got a Sony tape, VHS PAL, as you can see. Not that that makes any difference on the audio playback and record. You're just going through the SCART anyway. So you've got a splitter on the SCART. So you don't need to worry about any of the video quality. You don't need to worry about the NICAM. The NICAM is not to be used. NICAM is only used on broadcasts using the BBC approved, at least in this country, NICAM digital stereo, which is actually, looking at it, it's quite a low bit. It was brilliant for the time. It's 30 hertz or 35 hertz, sorry, kilohertz, at 14 or 15 bit. So you're not talking about 16-bit quality by any stretch of the imagination. Here you've got the old buttons for intelligent timer, program play. Just that basically they try to make these things easy for housewives who have no problem at all in using washing machines, which I have difficulty with. But when it comes to programming a video recorder, throughout the 80s and 90s and even the noughties, people were saying, oh yeah, well, I can't program my video recorder. So the Japanese were always trying to work out, hence the thing like Video Plus, barcode scanning, intelligent timer, program play, instant record, external link, quick erase. They were desperately trying to make these things as quick as possible. Obviously this was before on-screen programming came in, and now anybody just turns on their Skybox or their Virgin box, mainly made by companies such as Humax and Samsung. And they come up with a menu, and anybody can browse a menu just like a computer, select the ones they want to do. They can freeze it, pause it. Who would ever thought that you could be watching the 10 o'clock news and you actually freeze the guy reading the news, go and make a pizza or something, and then come back and then realise the pizza's burnt. No, I mean realise that the you can just carry on watching the news, and I could never really get my hand on that. I mean, the future will really come when we can rewind live TV. Fast forward live TV. Anyway, this Panasonic's been well serviced. The audio quality is no point on me demonstrating it in YouTube format because it's not really going to show. But anybody who's never touched a VHS before, you just put it in and the tape pops in and it laces up as discussed in the previous one, and you're ready to roll. You just hit record. There's two SCART sockets. You can have simultaneous input and output. You can plug a Freeview box in there if you want. You can plug satellite. External sources such as iPads, iPods, etc., will go in as long as you've got the converter from SCART. As I said in the previous clip, this has got Super LP, which basically means that it's a souped up version of long play, which long play was anyway. So nobody ever used that unless you were desperately short of tapes and you were wanting to record some sort of music marathon on Channel 4 that went on for 8 hours. Super Drive, I can't really find any information on. All I can assume that it's an improved mechanism inside the Panasonic. Now, the Panasonics in the past were renowned for amazingly robust mechanisms, almost professional-like, and a lot of the 20, 30-year-old ones are still going today. Opening up and looking inside this one, it's definitely not as robust as the first earlier machines, but probably better engineered, so you'll probably get the same sort of level. Anyway, this one's exceedingly smooth. From 0, that's the clock. The tape is in, we press play, and it starts straight away. Now that's quite rare, because in the past, on early decks, Even if the machine was in, it would take a certain lace to engage the head. Now, incidentally, one of the problems or issues with Betamax that lost the video war was the fact that the head was always engaged in the tape and always was laced up in the tape. So it was that people were already worried early on that would cause head wear, because the head was always engaged for the time code on the deck. But again, that was a professional thing. I'd never heard of anybody that had to replace Betamax decks, and it's interesting today that the cheapest Betamax decks go for 7 or 8 times the price of VHS. But again, that's probably for collectors who've got some sort of weird eclectic collection of tapes, and they're desperate to get Betamax recorders, because don't forget, VHS outsold Betamax by about 100 to 1 in the mid-90s and infinitely to 1 at the end. So there we go. That's probably the last clip from the Panasonic NV HV60. A bit of retro tech there from the noughties. I hope you enjoyed this, and good luck in finding one. They're readily available. Incidentally enough, there's the NV150 and 180, which are super VHS machines. If you're not going to use video, it's not worth bothering with, but even the video can't really give HD. You need to get digital VHS for that, and that's halfway house, which is not worth bothering with. And before I finish this clip, the 80 and the 70 are both hi-fi machines. Good night.